Yes, sir. You just found it. In course with you. Let's chat. Welcome to the Intercourse Show. I am your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. Breaking news. It appears as if Russia and the United States has agreed to a limited ceasefire. This is just coming in, fresh, hot off the stove. Apparently there was a call between Trump and Putin that took place today. I believe it's a 2-hour call. And that call has concluded, and it seems like they have some agreements that they would like to put on the books. Let's listen in to hear the details of that ceasefire.
No American weapons can be shipped. Presumably that means European weapons as well can be shipped to Ukraine during this ceasefire period. Now, that will be an issue for Ukraine. Of course, I imagine behind the scenes, Western military figures will be trying to determine whether that would impede Ukraine at all, whether actually they've got enough that the weaponry has been front-loaded to enough of an extent to allow the pause to happen to meet this demand from the other side for that period of 30 days. So again, that's something that we will look for clarity on. But for me, I mean, it's just, I might have read this or interpreted this wrong, but it seems to suggest a staged ceasefire with energy and infrastructure beginning first, then a maritime ceasefire. That's of course in the Black Sea, where there has been much fighting as well, and then a more broad ceasefire after that. That's my interpretation at this stage, certainly.
Mark, I mean, but no guarantees of those. I mean, they're talking about a 30-day ceasefire regarding energy infrastructure at the moment, just to be, as far as I read it.
Yeah, well, precisely, and certainly not what perhaps Donald Trump had hoped he would be able to do, in fact, on day one of his presidency. But certainly, I think he thought that maybe it would be easier than it is turning out to be. I mean, he would like to be able to stand in front of a podium as soon as he possibly can here at the White House and announce that he has achieved a full ceasefire. From this readout, from the words that we're getting here, that doesn't appear to be the result of this call.
Okay, Mark, thank you very much. And we await further word from the White House. But let's just, we're going to speak in a moment to the former ambassador to Moscow, Tony Brenton. But let's just have a quick word with Ivor Bennett, who's in Moscow. And Ivor, it does seem then that these conditions that President Putin first started talking about last week have now been presented formally, as it were, over the phone to President Trump.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. I'm just going through the Kremlin's readout, which is pretty comprehensive, and there's a lot of crossover, obviously, with what has come from the White House. But as you say, one of the key points that's jumped out to me is this statement that the root causes of the conflict need to be eliminated, and that, of course, is Vladimir Putin's code. It's Kremlin code for saying that Russia's security concerns need to be met and that Russia's red lines need to be met, i.e. this issue that Vladimir Putin keeps coming back to, no NATO membership for Ukraine, no NATO troops as peacekeepers there. That is one of the paragraphs in this readout. He says, the Kremlin says, having confirmed his fundamental commitment to a peaceful resolution of the conflict, the Russian president declared his readiness to thoroughly work out possible ways of settlement together with his American partners, and goes on to say, of course, take into account the absolute need to eliminate the root causes of the crisis, Russia's legitimate interests in the field of security. So he will have discussed his red lines, and I think that's very obvious, a statement that they have not gone away. But having said that, they have agreed something. It's a long way short of a full ceasefire, a full 30-day ceasefire on the front line that Kyiv signed up to this time last week in Saudi Arabia with the Americans. But they have agreed this to mutually refrain, the Kremlin says, from striking energy infrastructure facilities for 30 days. And we're told that Vladimir Putin immediately gave the Russian military the corresponding order. So there is something there. But as Mark says, we still await the exact details of what that really means on the ground. And also, we have a confirmation that tomorrow there is a prisoner exchange between Russian and Ukrainian forces, 175 people for 175. Also, the Kremlin says, as a gesture of goodwill, 23 seriously wounded Ukrainian servicemen who are undergoing treatment in Russia will be transferred. So there has been some agreement here, and there will be a ceasefire of sorts, but it's baby steps. It's nowhere near what Donald Trump wanted to announce, and nothing like what Kyiv signed up to a week ago.
No, because the bottom line, Ivor, is that the war goes on, and at the moment the war appears to be going in Vladimir Putin's favor. So I suppose why would he want to sign this ceasefire without all the conditions he's now putting up?
Well, exactly. There's nothing in his interest, right? What does he stand to gain? At the moment, he has the overwhelming advantage on the battlefield, and particularly, and what is really important for Vladimir Putin, I think, is what's happening in Russia's Kursk region, where Russia, after 7 months after Ukraine launched their incursion there and gained a foothold that they hope to use as a bargaining chip come negotiations, it seems like Russia's forces are on the verge of kicking them out. And this was Vladimir Putin visiting Kursk region for the first time since that incursion, this time last week, almost on Wednesday evening, I believe it was. Clearly felt confident enough to go to the region, dressed in military fatigues, which is very rare indeed, to go and tell his forces to continue their work there and try and eject and expel the Ukrainian forces as fast as possible. So there's no talk of ceasefire there. He wants Russia to get rid of the Ukrainians as soon as possible. He doesn't want to lose that advantage. And there is a paragraph in the Kremlin's communique on Kursk, actually, framing it that the Kremlin is doing Donald Trump and Ukraine a favor. He says, Vladimir Putin, in connection with Donald Trump's recent appeal to save the lives of Ukrainian servicemen surrounded in the Kursk region, which itself is a claim that's disputed by Ukraine. They say they're not surrounded. Vladimir Putin confirmed that the Russian side is ready to be guided by humanitarian considerations and, in the event of surrender, guarantees the lives of Ukrainian armed forces, soldiers, and decent treatment in accordance with Russian laws and international law. So he's not saying he's going to pause fighting there. He's saying that if they agree to surrender, then we'll allow them, we'll guarantee their lives. Still very much pursuing a victory in Kursk that he can sell to the Russian people and try and eliminate, I think, that aspect and that factor of future negotiations. As I say, Ukraine wanted to have that as a bargaining chip, but he intends that to not be the case. And yeah, so long as they have.
So there you have it, folks. It seems like there's a ceasefire in effect right now as we speak. And there's been some immediate steps taken to it. Now, you know, some of the U.S. political pundits are not big fans of Trump. And I'm sure their reaction to this news, you know, is going to be critical of Trump. Apparently, Zelensky has responded to the news, and this is what he had to say about it. So let's go ahead into that reaction.
Yeah, Kira, I was in a virtual room, only 15 journalists, the hastily arranged press conference by President Zelensky. It's actually the first time he's done anything like this. This is how quickly the Ukrainians want to respond to the Trump-Putin call. I asked very simply, would Ukraine match Vladimir Putin's pledge to not hit energy infrastructure in Russia? It's been it's been a big part of Ukraine's tactics in this war. It's made a significant impact. And his answer was, we would in principle, but we have to see the details. It was actually a Ukrainian suggestion originally. They floated this idea because it's taken a huge toll here in Ukraine. Energy infrastructure hit relentlessly. And with the irony that we often accompanies Vladimir Putin's statements, no sooner has he mentioned the idea of not hitting energy infrastructure than we hear just about half an hour ago a major power plant in Slovyansk was just struck by Russian missiles. Obviously, these are planned days, if not hours in advance. But nevertheless, it just kind of serves to, you know, show you that whilst all this talk is going on, nothing's actually happening here in Ukraine. I also asked President Zelensky if he felt that Donald Trump was the one calling the shots, or if it was in fact Vladimir Putin, because let's be honest, this is not a ceasefire agreement. This is a pledge that Vladimir Putin has made, contingent on Ukraine agreeing to it, but he has not agreed to the ceasefire. He dodged that. He does not want to be seen to be criticizing the United States. He said it's hard to tell, but what he does want very much is to get on the phone to Donald Trump and find out what's expected of him now and see if this really could be the first step to peace. He acknowledged it is a good step, but he'd like to see more. Worried, like many in Ukraine, at Vladimir Putin insisting that military assistance be cut off and intelligence sharing be cut off to this country. I mean, on this call, it's clear that Vladimir Putin listed all his demands in this more than 2.5 hours of conversation with Donald Trump, and he hasn't moved an inch on any of it. He's only agreed to the energy infrastructure strikes, and that's probably because they've taken a huge toll on his own energy infrastructure.
Okay, that was...
Now, the White House says that US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed to seek a limited ceasefire in Ukraine after holding talks over the phone. The Kremlin has confirmed that the two leaders agreed to pursue a ceasefire on energy and infrastructure targets. Under that proposal, both Russia and Ukraine would stop hitting each other's energy infrastructure for 30 days. The US says the next step will be technical negotiations to implement a ceasefire in the Black Sea and work towards a permanent peace. Let's get the view from Ukraine with DW's Nick Connolly, who's reporting from...
Okay, I'm going to shift real quick before we get into this conversation. I want to go ahead and shift to what was expected going into the meeting. There were some people who speculated as to what they thought would happen during the meeting. Let's look at what that was.
Diplomacy between Washington. This call comes on the back of a weekend of a fairly intensive diplomacy between Washington and Moscow, talking about the details of a ceasefire, a 30-day ceasefire. Undoubtedly, President Putin will have wanted these details to go on and on in order to delay the moment when he has to either agree to a 30-day ceasefire or not. And undoubtedly, President Trump tomorrow will be saying to him on the call, what's the problem? Why can't we move on to a ceasefire fairly quickly? Because there are a lot of things on the table, says President Putin. One of the things that won't be on the table tomorrow really is Kursk. The Kursk operation that the Ukrainians initiated early last August is now finished. Effectively, the Ukrainians have been pushed out of Kursk. Last week, Putin and Trump both said that the Ukrainians were surrounded. That wasn't true, even though President Trump repeated almost word for word what President Putin has said. The Ukrainians are holding on still to a little bit of a sliver, about 15 kilometers wide, of southern Kursk region. They've been pushed out of the main area of Sudza, so they've lost the enclave, which they did have from last August, but they've been able to get out. There's been a bit of a scramble over the weekend. They've lost some men, they've certainly lost some equipment, but they certainly have not been surrounded, so they're now moving back onto their own side of the border. In effect, the Kursk operation is now finished. The question we have to ask ourselves is, while these 15,000 Ukrainian troops have withdrawn, the 60,000 Russian troops who were in Kursk to throw them out, 60,000, they will undoubtedly be redeployed. So where will they be redeployed? It'll take 2 or 3 weeks, give them a bit of rest and rehabilitation, give them a bit of retraining and re-equipment. They'll turn up somewhere else on the battlefield. Where? My guess is it'll be somewhere around Pokrovsk, because in this area, in Pokrovsk, in Chaziv Yar, in Kostiantynivka, all of the areas around here are the areas where the Russians really want to make a strategic gain. And if they bring those troops round and if they have some effect in 2 or 3 weeks' time, then we'll certainly see it. And that will be yet another reason for President Putin not to want to go into an immediate 30-day ceasefire.
Okay, there you have it. So shifting the focus. There's a lot of different things to discuss. Apparently, they had that discussion today. That was a message projected yesterday. I think it's a win politically for Trump. He can say that he stopped the fighting at least for a little while. He saved lives at least for a little while. Obviously, Ukraine is going to feel concerned, because I think for them, their ultimate objective is to become a part of NATO, to get security guarantees, and anything that falls short of that, they deem as a failure. And if the U.S. is agreeing to halt military aid and intelligence or anything of that sort in exchange for ceasefire, I actually think it's the smartest thing, right? You stop providing military aid to Ukraine in the means of showing Russia, listen, we want this thing to end. Here's what we'll do on our part to assist in getting that goal met. Russia sees that and says, look, we want it to end as well. You're taking some good faith efforts towards that objective by halting aid. We'll go ahead and halt so that we can have a 30-day of non-combative period where we can discuss these matters. Now, it seems like they're just agreeing not to attack energy sectors or energy grids within Ukraine. And that could be understandable, in part because they may have strategic military gains that they're not trying to give up for the sake of a military halt or ceasefire. And for them, they're going to do everything to protect their positions and really to get what they ultimately want out of it. I don't think what they're asking for is unreasonable. At the end of the day, these guys don't want Ukraine and NATO on their doorsteps. That's the only thing they're saying. Give them what they want. Keep Ukraine neutral. As long as Ukraine is not meddling, trying to be a part of those people, they get their buffer area, Ukraine being that buffer area for them. It gives them a sense of security. To me, if I was Trump, I'd go a step further. I would propose to bring Russia into NATO so that if he's now a part of the European alliance where they were already doing business, exchanging oil and all that stuff, they were working together in some business capacities, then there's nothing to protect NATO from if he's a part of the alliance. To me, I feel like that's the very next step that he needs to consider. Take a step forward and do something out of the ordinary. Bring Russia to NATO, whether they like it or not. Include China in that discussion, include the U.S. in the discussion. The U.S. and China both stand behind Russia, saying we want to install Russia into NATO, and we want to have a roundtable where that operates similarly to how the UN operates, with voting powers and things of that nature, so that we can ensure that there's a proper incentive for peace, because the alternative is nuclear war. And nobody wants that, right? So at the end of the day, anybody gets out of line, those major powers will play a part to halt any kind of issues that lies. And then it minimizes the cost of having to do all these military operations if people could talk. These guys want to protect their interest. NATO obviously wants to expand for whatever reason. Power is corrupting, right? They don't want that expansion to come against their border. I don't think that's unreasonable. Again, I'm no expert on the matter. From the information I have, it seems like that would be the sensible thing to do. Obviously, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm happy to at least weigh in on the fact that an agreement has been met. And I think, if nothing else, the stop of lives being lost is a positive. And hopefully, I pray that Trump don't allow himself to continue to get brought into these military conflicts across the world where he's trying to meet certain agendas here in the U.S. To me, I feel like that's going to be his undoing. You can't go fight Russia. You can't go fight with NATO against Russia and then go fight with Israel against pretty much the Arab country in Gaza, and then go fight China, in the Caribbean Peninsula in that area, then go fight North Korea, and then fight South Africa, and then fight, like, you're stretching yourself short, all in the midst of implementing tariffs across all these partners that you may potentially need. Dude, you're doing too much, and that's going to overwhelm your ability to do anything, because you're fighting an economical front battle with various countries. So which means the market is fluctuating. There's no stability, right? And now while you're trying to course correct economically, you're engaged in all these conflicts. It's going to require funding and capital to fund. right? You're stretching yourself thin. To me, immediate peace on all fronts. I don't see why he's attacking no Houthis. Tell Israel, get the hell out of Gaza for the time being. You know what I'm saying? They've already met their objectives there. The leadership that posed a threat to them isn't there and isn't a viable threat to them. You want that ceasefire to stop, so now you not having to engage with the Houthis and as they attack ships and things of the nature. They shouldn't be doing that, but I understand the grounds for why they are. They're doing that because Israel's pretty much pounding innocent people into the dirt. At some point, that's the facts, right? So, you know, obviously Trump's going to take a stance with that. I'm Christian. Naturally, you know, I tend to lean, you know, on that side. But I do think if peace is going to be a key objective, you know, you can't keep pouring, you know, gas on a fire and expecting things not to burn. It's going to burn, and you're going to build resentment with people in the Middle East if you continue to bomb and destroy and what some are calling genocide to a group of people, especially if you displace them and push them out of that area and then you take it over. That is a cause for deep issues that will come in the future, far beyond Trump's term. So to me, I would say stay the hell out of all of that stuff. Get everybody, use your influence to get everybody to cut it out, stop fighting, right? Because you have that type of influence both economically and as a major power. Then focus on the economic agenda. For me, on the economic agenda, all these trade wars should not be happening simultaneously. I think that's crazy. I think the trade wars should happen on a regional basis. So when you're tariffing the North American countries like Mexico and Canada, you should not be engaged in a direct tariff battle with Europe and a direct tariff battle with China simultaneously as you're doing that with them. While you're doing that with them, force them to make a deal. Once that deal is suitable for you, then move on to the next region, Europe. So now in the event that Europe stops the flow of something to the US, you can subsidize that through the relationships you just built either on the North American treaty side or in the Chinese side, so that your people are never without. So if they decide they're going to not give you enough of something that is critical for your infrastructure and for things that we need here, it's easy for you to just resource it elsewhere until an agreement can be worked out. But if you have little pockets of beef with them and them and them, and now they stop certain things and they all collaborate not to subsidize it for you, it's going to take some time to ramp up the production in the U.S., given the fact that the manufacturing infrastructure is not necessarily there, and it's going to take the companies time to do what they need to do. It may not happen and recover within a period of time that falls within his term. So to me, that's not wise to just do everything simultaneously. Although I understand the purpose is to recreate jobs, to get companies invested in the U.S., and to be less involved in foreign companies or foreign countries, all commendable objectives, but you still have to approach it from a very strategic point of view. And to me, it's not strategic if you're fighting wars on multiple fronts, right? And in the end, you're weakening yourself in so doing while you're being called to be a proxy to 3 or 4 different wars going around the world. It's crazy. Nobody can do all that stuff at once, right? And it's not exactly like we are united politically, right? There's a lot of people who's like not a fan, especially his opposition. You know, your political enemies will use the dysfunction and the chaos of what's going on to attack you in the next midterm election. And if things are so chaotic where people lose money, things cost more, there's no stability in the country, and we're engaged in more wars than we were when you came in, you're gonna lose as a party. It's bound to happen. So to me, I understand he wants to do everything within his first term. I get it, being optimistic, but be strategic. Be strategic in how you approach things. You know, I want to see the guy win. I want to see the country wins. right? But at the same time, you can't win and be involved in everything. If it's an America First agenda, stick to the America First agenda. Why is picking fights with Iran a part of the America First agenda? How the hell does that help America First? I don't get it. Why is that? I get it. Iran was sponsoring proxies that was causing attacks on Israel and all these different things. But Israel is no punks. They're taking people out in Iran. They can stand up for themselves. Why we got to get involved in that? That's crazy work to me. I don't understand that, right? But if he allows himself to be dragged into these little conflicts, it's going to sabotage his presidency, because now his America First agenda is going to turn into, well, we got to put America First to the side right now because we're not helping Israel sponsor their Middle Eastern war. And why are we doing that? That's crazy. And why are we now involved in bombing people where there was a perception where the U.S. would have been the peacekeeper between the two sides? Now we're being viewed as part of the aggressors. That's a mission fail for Trump, especially if you came in saying you're going to go for peace, right? To me, I don't think it benefits him to say he's going to take over Gaza. Why would you do that, bro? Everyone will characterize that as a genocide and that you push those people out for the interest of a group of people, and again, right, who's not necessarily well perceived around the world with regards to how they handle matters. And again, I understand your allies as your allies. I'm not telling the U.S. not to be allied with Israel, because I think they should be. But they have to be the referee that puts a pause on Israel so that they don't go overboard, because they tend to have the tendency to go overboard. And we're either going to empower them to do that or we're not. And if we empower them to do that, we have to understand that in so doing, we're doing it to our own peril, because it's going to mean that we now have to stand behind our threats and support Israel in the midst of the enemies they're drawing in. Again, you don't want Iran to, get nuclear weapons and do all these different things, but you're not exactly talking to Iran or giving them incentives for why they shouldn't. If you're pushing somebody's back all the way against a corner, right, the only thing they're thinking is about survival. And at that point, they don't give a fuck. These people will blow themselves up. These aren't like logical thinking people that like reason. They don't care. If they're willing to blow their lives up, strap a bomb to their own body and blow themselves up, you are not talking to rational, life-preserving people. They don't give a fuck. Doing that is not going to provoke them, you know what I'm saying, to like preserve their own life. They're willing to sacrifice their life for their beliefs. So you got to understand your audience. To me, I don't feel like that's Trump's strength, to go over here fighting with these people on ideological matters that go far deeper than his economical strengths are. These people truthfully believe in what they believe. Like, they will die for everything they believe. And I get it. But if somebody's willing to strap a bomb to their body and go blow themselves up for the sake of meeting an objective, I don't doubt they'd be willing to do any means necessary to survive as a people. To me, pouring fuel on the fire does not help the situation. To me, I want to see Trump win. I want to see him obviously keep peace around the world, because to his credit, when the guy was in his first term, there was no wars, and he brought peace so that he can solely focus on the economical battles that he feels like he should take on these various countries. But bruh, if you have these economical battles going on simultaneously as you're being a proxy to multiple wars, it's no country could do that. You know what I mean? In the end, I will be praying for the United States, its leaders. In the end, I will be praying for peace around the world. In the end, I will be praying for stability, right? For security for Israel, for security for the people of Gaza, for just peace as a whole. Because as a Christian, that's what I'm called to do, is to pray and to believe that peace is a possibility and that we can live peaceably in this world. But at the same time, I also have little children. And there's a ton of people who don't want to see, the extension of humankind, because you got these hot button leaders ready to push the button at any moment. Why are we, triggering people and pushing them against the wall where they feel like they have to? To me, it's not wise. And to me, my opinion, as we come along some of these news revelations, and I go on this very long rant, is let's keep the peace. Let's stay in prayer. Let's keep God first, and let's figure out how to live peaceably on this earth. You know what I mean? The Bible says, blessed are the peacekeepers. And I would urge Trump not to stray from that. Remain the peacekeeper, not the procrastinator, not the one who's provoking conflict around the world. You know what I mean? To me, that's why I think Trump had a mandate, because there was a lot of these, deep state people who had an agenda to keep us fighting and at odds with other countries around the world. If he's coming in as the opposite of that, letting himself get engaged in wars doesn't make him different from his predecessors. That's a bad thing. I don't know who's advising them that this is a wise idea. I don't get it, right? So now it's going to have people change the perception they have of this guy, of just being a business guy who wants to compete and have a safe world. The perception is going to change to, oh, he's just like the rest of them, warmongering. And now the sentiment will change around, well, how different is he? You know what I'm saying? To me, I don't think that's what he wants. And I don't think that's going to serve his legacy very much. So my opinion is stay away from all that war shit, man. Stop. Stay away from it. You have the ability to put a pause on all that shit, right? Obviously, we're not going to be bullied. Sometimes you got to stand up for what's yours, your interests, and things of that nature. But don't let other people drag you into fights that's not your fight, bro. Right? Especially when you have the power to stop the shit immediately. Trump came in January after a war been waging between Gaza and Israel for a long time. He said, here's the terms of the peace. The shit happened instantly. Now all of a sudden we're like a part of the people bombing them, and we're talking about taking over and doing all this shit. That sounds crazy. I don't understand. And I'm a supporter of the guy. I don't understand why that would make sense if he's a non-war peacekeeping president. I don't get it, which means the influence is different. Now, I also understand the humanity side of it. Just as a matter of policy for any country, you can't go around taking hostages, American hostages, Israeli hostages, and hostages from other parts of the world, and then expect the world to be sympathetic to your cause. It's going to be a tough uphill battle to do that. So if a good faith effort is to turn the hostages over so you can show some sort of good faith, goodwill effort as a means of securing your people's existence so that you don't have these major powers constantly bombing you and coming for you, I think it's wise to do that, right? Because it's hard for someone to defend. Well, they're mad and they're trying to get hostages back, but you got the hostages, and now we got to tell them to stop trying to get the hostages back. The narrative is horrible. Like, it's not good at all. So it would behoove these people to actually protect your public image and return the hostages. If that's what it takes for the lives of others to be spared, return the freaking hostages. What benefit do they serve you if your people ceases to exist because these people are ready to push the button over them hostages? It doesn't make sense to me. But I don't know. I'm just a guy who doesn't want to see people die, who doesn't want to see innocent blood shed, and who wants peace. So that's my take. Obviously, I don't know where you guys sit on the matter. I would encourage you to hop in and let your voice be heard. For those who are not subscribed to the channel, I ask that you like and subscribe and stay connected. All right. Signing off on this topic.